My daughter told me I had 1 week to move into a retirement home, or she'd have me removed by force. She said the house I built with my own hands was wasted on me. I smiled, looked her straight in the eye, and told her, "Try the front door." She was about to learn that the old contractor still had a few tools left in his belt. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how 30 years of sacrifice turned into a declaration of war. My name is David, and until a few months ago, my life was quiet, simple, the way I liked it. The squeak of the old porch swing was my rhythm. I knew it better than my own heartbeat. I sat there, sanding the armrest. The wood was solid oak, just like the rest of the house. I built this place 30 years ago, laid the foundation, raised the walls, installed every cabinet by hand. This house wasn't just wood and nails. It was my history. It was where I brought Lisa home. My wife, when she passed away, Jessica, our daughter, was only 5. I remember standing in the doorway, holding her tiny hand. The house felt too big, too quiet. I was a contractor then, sawdust and sweat, but I promised her I would give Jessica everything. And I did. I traded my dreams for hers. I took the safe jobs, the steady jobs. I needed to be home for dinner, every night. I fixed broken toys, helped with math homework I barely understood, sat through endless school plays, pretending I wasn't exhausted. I wore the same patched-up jeans for years, so she could have the newest sneakers. My life was the scaffolding she used to climb higher. I was the silent backbone, the foundation she stood on, and I never complained. Not once, until the day she brought him home. Jessica grew up smart, driven. She went to a good college, paid for by the savings account I bled dry, landed a fancy marketing job in the city. I was proud, so proud. Then she met Mike. Mike was polished. He wore shoes that clicked on the hardwood floors I'd installed. He talked a lot about investments, portfolios, maximizing assets. He looked at my calloused hands like they were something dirty. He had a habit of adjusting his cuffs even when he wore short sleeves. A nervous tic disguised as confidence. When they got married last year, I walked her down the aisle. She looked so much like Lisa, it made my chest ache. I felt joy, but I also felt a cold dread, a feeling I couldn't name. It started small. It always does, but the cracks were already forming. I just didn't want to see them. It was a Tuesday evening, spring. I was cleaning up after dinner. Just a simple stew, nothing fancy. Headlights swept across the living room window. I heard the car doors shut, not Jessica's small sedan. The quiet, expensive hum of Mike's electric car. "Dad, we're here," Jessica called out. She breezed into the kitchen. She looked different. Her hair was sharper, her clothes tighter, more severe. Mike followed her. He carried a bottle of wine. I knew it cost more than my weekly grocery bill. "Hey, kiddo, what's the occasion?" I asked. I wiped my hands on a dish towel. Mike didn't shake my hand. He never did. He just set the wine on the counter. He adjusted his cuffs. "We have news, David," he said. He always used my first name, never Dad. Jessica bounced on her heels. "We're moving back?" Mike got an amazing opportunity, overseeing the new development downtown. My heart leaped. My girl was coming home. "That's wonderful. So you'll be nearby." Mike looked around my kitchen. His eyes paused on the cabinets Lisa and I had painted a sunny yellow years ago. He wrinkled his nose. "Closer than you think," Mike said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "The housing market here is insane right now, David," he explained, his tone dripping with superiority. "Everything is overpriced. It's foolish to buy at the peak." Jessica jumped in. She tucked a strand of her sharp hair behind her ear. A tell I recognized. She was nervous, but pushing through. "So, we were hoping, just for a little while, 6 months tops, we could stay here, with you, until we find the perfect place." I didn't hesitate. This was my daughter, my flesh and blood. "Of course," I said, pulling her into a hug. "This is your home. Stay as long as you need." I didn't see the look Mike and Jessica shared over my shoulder. It wasn't a look of gratitude. It was a look of acquisition. The invasion had begun. They didn't just move in, they colonized. It happened within a week. The guest room, Jessica's childhood room, wasn't enough. They needed space, space to work, space to breathe. My space. I had a small study. It was where I kept my bills, Lisa's old books, the blueprints for this house. It was my quiet corner, Mike decided it was the perfect spot for his workstation. I came home one afternoon. I heard noises from the study. I walked in. Mike was unplugging my old desk lamp. My worn leather chair was already in the hallway, pushed aside like junk. "Mike, what are you doing?" He didn't look up. "Setting up, David. Need the space." He replaced my chair with a sharp, metallic thing. It looked like a torture device. He set up 3 computer monitors on the desk I'd built myself. Wires everywhere. "We need the bandwidth, David," he explained later, when the internet crawled. "We're running a business here. We upgraded the plan. It's only an extra $100 a month, an extra $100 I didn't have." I looked at the study. My space? Gone. Replaced by cold technology. I just nodded. I wanted to keep the peace. I didn't want to cause trouble. Not yet. I thought it was temporary. I was so wrong. Then Jessica started on the living room. The comfortable old sofa I loved, the one where I used to read bedtime stories to her. It was pushed against the far wall, blocking the hallway closet. "It opens up the space, Dad," she said. She held an expensive-looking design magazine. "We need better flow." "I like the flow," I muttered. "Dad, please. This room is so dated. We need something modern, something clean." Dated. The word stung. The house stopped smelling like sawdust and lemon polish. It started smelling like Mike's strong, aggressive cologne, and the exotic takeout they ordered every night. I'd make a pot of coffee in the morning. The good stuff. Mike would dump it out. He used his fancy espresso machine. It hissed and sputtered like an angry snake. I started feeling like a guest, tiptoeing around my own home, afraid to touch things, afraid to make noise. But the worst part was still to come. The mantelpiece above the fireplace. That was sacred ground, photos of Jessica's first day of school, her graduation, and in the center, the large wedding photo of Lisa and me, my favorite picture of her, smiling wide, her eyes full of life. One afternoon I came in from the yard. I stopped short. The mantelpiece was different. Jessica's graduation photo was still there, but next to it was a huge glossy picture of her and Mike, on a beach somewhere, looking like models, my wedding photo, the one of Lisa and me. It was gone. I felt a cold dread creep into my stomach. I looked around, frantic. I found it on a dusty bookshelf in the hallway, tucked behind a stack of Mike's business books, hidden away like a secret, like an embarrassment. I picked it up, wiped the dust off Lisa's face. My hands were shaking, not with sadness, with a quiet simmering anger. "Jessica?" I called out. My voice was tighter than I intended. She came out of the study, phone pressed to her ear. She held up a finger, signaling me to wait. I waited for 2 minutes, while she discussed metrics. Finally, she sighed, loudly. "What is it, Dad?" "We're on a deadline." I held up the photo. My knuckles were white. "Why did you move this?" She crossed her arms. She didn't even look ashamed. "Dad, honestly, it's so old. The frame is cracked. I can fix the frame. It just looked cluttered," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "We're trying to modernize the place. We can't have all this old stuff lying around. Cluttered. My life, my marriage, cluttered." "Modernize," I repeated. The word tasted like ash. "This is your mother. I know who it is," she snapped. She tucked her hair behind her ear again, sharply. "But we live here now, too. We need space for our memories. It's our home now. Our home now." She turned and walked back into the study, shut the door firmly. I stood there, holding the picture of the woman I loved. The woman for whom I built this house. I realized I was being systematically erased, and they were just getting started. I live on a fixed income. My retirement savings are modest, built on years of careful saving. I planned for a quiet life. Simple needs. I didn't plan for 2 ambitious adults, with very expensive tastes. At first, I was happy to pay for the groceries, but the bills started climbing. Rapidly, the organic vegetables, the imported cheeses, the thick-cut steaks they cooked every other night. It was adding up fast. The electricity bill tripled. Mike kept the air conditioning running constantly. The house felt like a refrigerator. The water bill doubled. My budget was bleeding out, and they didn't seem to notice or care. One evening, Jessica found me at the kitchen table, calculator in hand, looking over the growing stack of bills. My stomach was tight with anxiety. "What's wrong, Dad?" she asked, pouring herself a glass of that expensive sparkling water. "Just budgeting," I said. I tried to keep my voice light. Things are getting a little tight this month. She frowned. Well, we are contributing. They gave me $200 a month for rent. It barely covered the increase in utilities. It felt like an insult. I know, but look, Dad, she interrupted. Her tone shifted. It wasn't kind. It was condescending. Mike and I have a lot of our money tied up in investments right now. It's complicated. Asset allocation. She spoke slowly, like I was stupid. We can't access it easily, she continued. It's just for a little while longer, until we close this big deal. She patted my shoulder, a gesture that felt cold. You've always taken care of me. Can you just cover this for now? We'll pay you back with interest. I looked at my daughter, the little girl who used to ride on my shoulders. The habit of sacrifice was too ingrained. I couldn't say no, I nodded slowly. Okay, Jessica, for a little while. I started dipping into the emergency fund, the money I saved for years, in case the roof needed replacing, or the water heater burst. It was disappearing, swallowed up by their lifestyle, their aesthetic. I was funding my own destruction. The back shed was my sanctuary. It was where I kept my tools, the saws, the drills, the hammers that had built this house, and countless others. It was also where Lisa kept her gardening supplies. Her old gloves and trowels still hung on a hook by the door. Sometimes I'd just go in there and breathe, remembering the smell of the earth and her laughter. It was the last place that still felt like mine, until Mike decided he wanted it. I was organizing my toolbox, oiling my chisels. When Mike walked in, he didn't knock. He looked around, a look of disgust on his face, that familiar wrinkle of his nose. It's incredible how much junk you accumulate, David. It's not junk, I said quietly, closing the toolbox. It's my livelihood. Was, he corrected. His voice was sharp, dismissive. He adjusted his cuffs. You're retired now. You don't need all this stuff. It's just clutter. He paced the small space, tapping the walls, testing the structure, listening for weakness. The structure is unstable. It's practically falling apart. Termite risk. It's solid, I said, feeling defensive. I built it myself. It's cedar. Exactly, he said. It's outdated. We have a better idea. He pulled out a tablet, showed me a sleek modern design. It was a glass box, sharp angles, cold metal. A home gym and meditation space, he announced proudly. We need a space to exercise, to center ourselves. He looked me straight in the eye. This shed is wasted square footage. Wasted. The word hit me hard. This shed is wasted square footage. Wasted. The word hit me hard. You want to tear down the shed? I asked, disbelief coloring my voice. It's the logical move, he said, like he was explaining basic math to a child. It will significantly increase the property value. Property value. This is my workshop. David, we can't let sentimentality get in the way of profit. Profit. That was all he cared about. My history meant nothing. No, I said. The word came out firm, strong, surprising even me. I'm not tearing down the shed. My tools are in here. Lisa's things are in here. Mike's face tightened. His polished mask slipped. David, you need to be realistic. We are trying to improve this property. You're standing in the way of progress. This is my property, I reminded him, my voice rising, and I said no. He glared at me, a long, cold moment. Then he turned and walked out. I knew then, this wasn't just about a shed. It was about control. It was about proving that my world, my history, meant nothing. And I knew he wouldn't stop there. He was preparing for something bigger. A few days later, I was cleaning the kitchen, wiping down the counters they rarely cleaned themselves. I saw a thick folder lying on the counter. It was labeled Property Appraisal, Confidential. I wouldn't normally snoop, but after the incident with the shed, a sense of dread had settled over me. My heart hammered against my ribs. My hands were shaking as I opened it. I opened the folder. My eyes scanned the documents, pausing on the final number. My breath caught in my throat. The house was worth much more than I realized. The town had grown rapidly. The area around my neighborhood was booming. The land alone, the large lot I bought for a song 30 years ago, it was worth a small fortune. I felt sick, but that wasn't the worst part. I flipped the page. Notes scribbled in Mike's handwriting. Sharp, aggressive strokes. Potential for redevelopment. Zoning variance possibilities. Tear down and build condos. Maximize ROI. ROI. Return on investment. My home was just a line item on his spreadsheet. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The temporary stay, the criticisms of the house, the suggestion to tear down the shed, the talk of increasing property value. It was all a lie. They weren't house hunting. They weren't looking for a new place. They wanted mine. They wanted to tear it down, build something cold, modern, profitable. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My daughter, the child I had sacrificed everything for, was planning to destroy my home. The home I built with my own 2 hands. The home filled with every memory of Lisa. I carefully placed the folder back on the counter. My mind was racing. The quiet life I thought I had was over. A war had begun, and I was already losing. The tension in the house thickened, like hardening cement. We moved around each other in silence, the air heavy with unspoken words. I tried to keep busy, organizing the garage, fixing a leaky faucet, anything to avoid the cold reality settling in my living room. I felt their eyes on me, evaluating, assessing, waiting for me to break. One evening, I was sitting in my old armchair, the one they had banished to the corner, trying to read. Jessica and Mike were in the kitchen. They thought I couldn't hear them, or maybe they didn't care if I did. "We have the investors coming next week, Jess," Mike hissed. Jessica murmured something I couldn't catch. "We can't entertain them here," Mike continued, his voice rising. "It's embarrassing. Embarrassing," Mike repeated, louder this time. "Look at this place. It looks like a handyman's shack." A handyman's shack. The words stung deep. This house, built with love and sweat and sacrifice, reduced to a shack. "Your father needs to understand this is our base of operations now," Mike said, his voice dripping with contempt. "He's lucky we're even letting him stay while we sort this out." Lucky. I was lucky to be allowed to stay in my own home. I closed my book, the words blurring on the page. My vision swam with unshed tears. Anger. Humiliation. A profound sense of betrayal. They didn't just want the house. They wanted to erase me from existence. I knew I couldn't fight this alone. I needed advice. I needed someone outside the suffocating walls of this house to tell me I wasn't crazy. I went next door to see John. He's been my neighbor for 20 years, a retired teacher, a kind heart. He had a habit of squinting, even when the sun wasn't bright. We sat on his porch, drinking lemonade. I told him everything. The appraisal, the talk of condos, the way they treated me. "They're pushing me out, John," I said. The words tasted bitter. John shook his head slowly. He squinted at the horizon. "I see the fancy car, David. I see the way the guy walks around like he owns the place." He leaned in closer. "Be careful. Greed changes people. It's my daughter, John." "I know," John said softly, "but sometimes family is the first to take advantage, because they know you won't fight back." His advice was clear. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to any co-signing or loans. Keep your paperwork locked up. Secure your assets. His words confirmed my fears. But they also sparked something else, a flicker of defiance. I called my sister, Sarah. She lives a few towns over. A practical woman. Sharp eye for nonsense. She was always fiercely protective of me. I could hear her tapping her fingers impatiently on the phone as I spoke. She never liked Mike. "Mike is a snake, David," she said immediately. Her voice was fierce. "I saw it at the wedding. His eyes were cold. He's using Jessica." "Why is she letting him?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Because she wants the lifestyle he promised her," Sarah said, her fingers tapping faster. "She's blinded by the money, David. She's changed, Sarah. She's not the girl I raised." "I know, honey," she said, her voice softening. "But right now you need to protect yourself. Before they take everything you have left, you need a lawyer." "A lawyer? A lawyer? Against my own daughter?" The thought made me sick. But Sarah was right. I had to protect myself. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It was that conversation that gave me the strength for what came next. A few days later, Mike approached me in the hallway. He was wearing his polished shoes, his practiced fake smile. The snake Sarah warned me about. "David, can we talk for a moment? In the study?" Did Mike approach me in the hallway? He was wearing his polished shoes, his practiced fake smile. The snake Sarah warned me about. "David, can we talk for a moment? In the study?" he asked, his voice smooth as silk. I nodded warily, followed him into the room that was no longer mine. He sat behind the desk, steepled his fingers. Like a CEO about to fire an employee. We've been thinking about the future, he said. Estate planning. My blood ran cold. It's important to be prepared, he continued, especially at your age. He handed me a thick document, official looking, full of legal jargon. What is this? I asked, taking it cautiously. We think it would be wise, essential, really, for you to add Jessica to the deed of the house, he said. His smile was tight, forced. Why? It simplifies things down the line, he explained smoothly. Protects the asset from probate. Protects the asset, not the home. The asset. They were trying to take legal control. The trap was set. I need to think about this, I said, folding the paper. Keeping it in my hand. Have my lawyer look at it. Mike's smile faltered. His eyes turned cold. That's unnecessary, David. It's just a formality. He leaned forward. We have a notary coming by this afternoon. Let's just get it done. Simple. Easy. The pressure was intense. Calculated. They wanted me to fold. No, I said, standing up. My voice was firm. I will not sign anything without advice. I walked out. The document clutched in my hand. Mike glared at me as I left. The mask was completely off now. I called Robert, an old family friend, a lawyer I trusted. I drove to his office immediately. Robert's office was quiet, calm. He sat back in his chair. He had a habit of clicking his pen when he was thinking hard. Once, twice, 3 times. He looked over the document. His face grew grave. David, do not sign this, Robert warned immediately, tapping the paper with his pen. This is a joint tenancy agreement. What does that mean? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It means if you add Jessica to the deed, she becomes a full co-owner, he explained. He leaned forward, the pen clicking rapidly now. She can force a sale of the house, even if you don't want to sell. He looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. Given what you've told me, David, they are trying to seize control of your property. They are trying to steal your home, legally. I thanked him, my blood running cold. It wasn't just disrespect, it was calculated theft. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they thought I was too stupid to figure it out. But I was a builder. I knew how to follow a plan, and I knew how to tear things down too. I confronted Jessica that evening. I tried to be calm, rational. I met her in the kitchen. Mike was on a call. Jessica, I can't sign this, I said, placing the document on the kitchen table. Her face hardened instantly. Why not? Mike explained it. It's just paperwork to protect me. It's not just paperwork, I said, my voice steady. It gives you the power to sell the house, without my consent. I'm not ready to give up my home. She sighed dramatically, tucked her hair behind her ear. Dad, you're being so difficult, so paranoid. Paranoid. We're trying to help you manage your affairs, she insisted. Helping me by taking my house? We're trying to secure our future. My future, she said, her voice rising, sharp with resentment. You're always clinging to the past. It's suffocating. Then she played her trump card, the one she knew would hurt the most. Mom would have wanted me to be happy, she said, her eyes flashing. She would have wanted me to succeed. Why are you standing in the way of that? The mention of Lisa was a low blow, a calculated strike, weaponizing her memory, to manipulate me. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. Don't you dare tell me what your mother would have wanted, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. She would have wanted you to have a heart, to have integrity. Jessica glared at me, her eyes cold and unfamiliar. So unlike the little girl I knew. You're just a selfish old man, she spat, afraid of change. She turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the kitchen, the silence broken only by the hum of Mike's expensive espresso machine. The battle lines were drawn. She had chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. The atmosphere in the house became toxic, poisonous. Jessica stopped speaking to me altogether. She communicated through sticky notes, left on the refrigerator. Buy more milk. The dry cleaning needs to be picked up, as if I were the hired help, not the homeowner, not her father. Mike became openly hostile. He knew the pretense was over. He started playing loud, aggressive music late at night, knowing I went to bed early. He'd deliberately leave his workout equipment scattered across the living room floor, an obstacle course. He was marking his territory, trying to push me out physically, since he couldn't do it legally. But the most blatant act was the parking. I have an old truck. I use it for hauling wood and supplies. One morning I went out to run errands. I found Mike's expensive electric car parked diagonally across the driveway, completely blocking my truck in. The street was empty. There was no reason for it, other than malice. I went back inside. Mike, you need to move your car. I can't get out. He was sitting at the kitchen counter, sipping his coffee, staring at his laptop. He didn't even look up. I'm busy, David. You'll have to wait. I have appointments. So do I, he said coldly. More important ones. My time is valuable. His time was valuable. Mine was worthless. I stood there, feeling helpless, trapped in my own driveway, in my own life. I ended up walking to the store, the humiliation burning in my chest. They were escalating, trying to push me to my breaking point, and they were about to succeed, but not in the way they thought. They realized I wasn't going to be easily manipulated or bullied into signing the deed, so they switched tactics. They started trying to make me doubt myself, my competence, my sanity. It started with small things. I'd misplace my keys, only to find them later in a strange place, like the refrigerator. I knew I didn't put them there. I'd forget a name or a date, normal things. But Jessica would exchange a worried, overly dramatic look with Mike. Are you okay, Dad? She'd ask, her voice dripping with fake concern. You seem confused lately. Then it escalated to something far more sinister. One afternoon, I came home from the hardware store. I found Jessica and Mike standing in the kitchen, looking panicked. The smoke alarm was blaring loudly. The air smelled faintly of burning. Dad, what did you do? Jessica cried out, pointing to the stove. I looked at the stove. One of the burners was on high, an empty tea kettle sitting on it, scorched black. I didn't leave that on, I said, confused. My heart pounded in my chest. I hadn't used the stove since breakfast, and I never used that kettle. It was Mike's. You must have, Mike said, shaking his head gravely. David, this is dangerous. You could have burned the house down. This is serious. They looked so convincing, so concerned. I'm telling you, I didn't. Dad, you're getting forgetful, Jessica said, her voice laced with that same fake concern. It's happening more and more. She looked at Mike. A silent communication passed between them. Maybe you're not safe living here anymore, she said slowly. Maybe we need to talk about other arrangements. They were laying the groundwork, trying to build a case that I was incompetent, unable to take care of myself, so they could take over, take everything. They were trying to make me believe I was losing my mind, gaslighting me. I felt a cold dread wash over me. They were trying to erase not just my past, but my present too. My reality. I started double-checking everything I did, questioning my own memory. Was I losing it? They almost had me convinced. Almost. The investors were coming. The ones Mike had mentioned. The vultures circling my home. Jessica and Mike were in a frenzy, cleaning, staging the house as if it were already theirs. They hired a professional cleaning crew, who moved my few remaining belongings without care, throwing them into boxes. They treated me like an embarrassing secret, a stain they couldn't scrub out. It's important we make a good impression, Dad, Jessica said. She wasn't looking at me. She was adjusting a vase of expensive flowers. Please, just stay out of the way. Stay out of the way. In my own house. But I didn't. I stayed. I sat in my armchair, watching them present my home as their own. I saw the lead investor walk in, a man named Mr. Harrison. Sleek suit, shark eyes, just like Mike. He surveyed the room, nodding approvingly at Mike's presentation. I heard snippets of their presentation. Open concept, room for expansion, and the phrase that chilled me, tear down potential, tear down potential. My life's work, reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet. Mr. Harrison looked at my house like it was a pile of cash waiting to be grabbed. That evening, after the investors left, we sat down for dinner. They had ordered expensive Italian food, celebrating their victory. It was a tense affair, the silence heavy and suffocating. I put down my fork. The food tasted like ash in my mouth. It was time. I saw the appraisal, I said quietly. Jessica and Mike froze, their forks halfway to their mouths. The mask slipped. I know you want to tear down the house, I continued, my voice gaining strength, and build condos. I looked directly at Mike. I know you tried to trick me into signing the deed. Mike recovered first. He always did. He dabbed his mouth with a napkin, smiled condescendingly. David, you're confused, he said, his voice patronizing. We're just trying to maximize the potential of this property. He leaned forward. It's a gold mine, and frankly, it's wasted on you. Wasted on me. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Wasted on me, I repeated, the disbelief sharp and painful. I built this house. I sacrificed everything for it. I turned to Jessica. For you, Jessica, 30 years of my life. Jessica looked down at her plate, shame flickering briefly in her eyes, before she suppressed it. Dad, that's not fair, she whispered. We appreciate what you did, but what? I demanded. She looked up at me. Her eyes were hard, unrecognizable. It's just a house, Dad, she said coldly. And Mike is right. It is wasted on you, she continued, her voice gaining momentum. You just sit here, wallowing in the past, surrounded by clutter. We have a future to build, a life to live. She stood up, energized by her own cruelty, and delivered the final blow. And you're the obstacle. The words hung in the air. Sharp, final. The little girl I loved, the child I devoted my life to, was gone. The air, sharp, final. The little girl I loved, the child I devoted my life to, was gone. The like you emios toftable. We one for walk you, one for a midi, round of operity feel, round for thousand Spanish. The Danshan is 1,000 by wall, e urplage no for annotation all day. In her place was a stranger, cold, greedy, cruel. The breaking point had arrived. There was nothing left to save. The foundation was cracked. It was time to tear it all down. The next morning, the air in the house was brittle. The unspoken war had finally been declared openly. I was making coffee, in the old drip maker. I had hidden it from Mike. A small act of rebellion. Jessica and Mike walked into the kitchen, dressed in their sharp business clothes, looking ready for battle. They stood side by side, a united front. We need to talk, David, Mike said, his voice devoid of any warmth. I turned to face them, crossing my arms. I was done being afraid. Go ahead. Jessica stepped forward. She didn't look angry. She looked resolute, cold. We've made a decision, Dad, she said, her voice steady and emotionless. We are going to proceed with the redevelopment of this property. We have the investors lined up. We are ready to move forward. And what about me? I asked, though I already knew the answer. We found a lovely retirement community for you, she said, handing me a glossy brochure. Maple Grove. I looked at the brochure. Pictures of smiling seniors, playing cards, sitting in rocking chairs, a gilded cage, a place to wait to die. It's quiet, safe, she continued, as if she were selling me a used car. They have a room available next week. I'm not leaving my home, I said, tossing the brochure on the counter. Mike sighed impatiently. David, don't be difficult. This is happening. Whether you like it or not. He stepped closer, invading my space. It's time for the next generation. We deserve this space. We've earned it. Earned it, I roared, the sound echoing in the quiet kitchen, the anger finally erupting. I built this house with my own 2 hands. You haven't earned anything. And now it's time to let it go, Jessica said, her voice sharp, final. We are giving you 1 week to move out, 1 week to pack your things and make arrangements. She paused. If you don't, we will be forced to take legal action to have you removed. The ultimatum hung in the air. 30 years of sacrifice, dismissed in a single, cold sentence. I looked at my daughter, searching desperately for a flicker of the little girl I knew, the girl who used to run to me when she scraped her knee. Jessica, I said, my voice thick with emotion, breaking for the first time. How can you do this to me? I took care of you for 30 years, I continued, the words tumbling out. I gave you everything I had. Doesn't that mean anything to you? She didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. You did what you were supposed to do, Dad, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. You were a parent. That doesn't mean I owe you my life. She took a deep breath. I don't owe you anything. The words were a knife twisting in my gut, but she wasn't finished. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. And honestly, you've been holding me back my whole life, with your small-town mindset, your sawdust and sweat, your patched-up jeans. She looked me up and down, disgusted. I was embarrassed by you. Embarrassed. The ultimate betrayal. Mike opened my eyes, she continued, gesturing to her husband, who stood beside her, smug and silent. He showed me what I deserve, what success looks like. He is the man I married, she said, her voice rising. The head of this family now, and he deserves more respect than you ever gave him. The final blow, the words from my nightmare made real. I want the keys, she said, holding out her hand. Now. I looked at her outstretched hand, the hand I used to hold when crossing the street, the hand I taught to write her name. 30 years of quiet endurance, 30 years of sacrifice, 30 years of being the silent backbone. And this was my reward. A strange wave of calm washed over me. The anger, the hurt, the disbelief. It all faded away, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I was done being the victim. I was done being erased. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my keys. I held them up, the metal glinting in the morning light. You want the keys? I asked, my voice low and steady. Jessica nodded, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. Mike folded his arms. Victorious. You can't have them, I said. Her smile faded. Dad, don't be ridiculous. We told you. This is happening. I'm not being ridiculous, I interrupted. I'm reclaiming what's mine. Mike stepped forward, his face tightening with anger. David, we warned you. Don't force us to call the police on you. You think I didn't know what you were doing? I said, my voice rising. The appraisal? The deed? The gaslighting? I looked straight at Mike. I know you staged the stove incident, Mike. I never used that kettle. Jessica paled. We were just trying to help. You were trying to steal my home, I roared. The home I built for your mother. The home I raised you in. I turned to Mike. You talk about respect? You talk about earning? You're just a parasite, feeding off what others have built. Mike lunged forward, but I stood my ground. I was a builder. I was strong. This is my house, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. And I want you out. Both of you. You can't kick us out, Jessica cried, her voice shrill, panicked. We live here. We have rights. Not anymore, I said. You are tenants at will, and I am revoking my permission. I paused, letting the words sink in. You have 1 hour to pack your essentials and leave. If you don't, I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Trespassing. You're crazy, Mike shouted. Am I? I asked, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. Try the front door. Jessica looked confused. She walked to the front door, tried the handle. It didn't budge. She tried the back door, locked tight. What did you do? She asked, turning to me, the panic rising in her eyes, the realization dawning. I changed the locks, I said simply. Yesterday, while you were out meeting with Mr. Harrison, I let that hang in the air for a moment. My sister Sarah and my neighbor John helped me. I continued. Robert, my lawyer, advised me on the exact legal process. Everything is documented. They were stunned into silence. They had underestimated me. They thought I was just a washed-up old man, easily manipulated, easily discarded. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. 1 hour, I repeated, pointing to the stairs. Pack your things. The rest will be delivered to wherever you end up. The next hour was a whirlwind of chaotic activity. Jessica and Mike were furious, shouting threats, slamming doors. Mike called his lawyer, but Robert had already prepared me. They had no legal standing. Their attempt to seize the property through manipulation had failed. They packed their expensive clothes, their gadgets, their fancy espresso machine. They couldn't take the furniture they had bought. Robert was handling that, regarding the money they owed me. For the utilities, the stress, they were finally paying the price. They loaded everything into Mike's electric car. The silence between them heavy and suffocating. They looked broken, defeated. The polished facade shattered. Jessica stopped at the doorway, her face pale and strained. She looked at me. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of regret, of the little girl I once knew, but then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask she had worn for months. You'll regret this, Dad, she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. You'll die alone in this house. I'd rather die alone with my dignity, I said quietly, than surrounded by people who don't value me. She turned and walked away, without a backward glance. I watched them drive away, the quiet hum of the car fading into the distance. The house was silent, empty, but it felt clean again. The air felt lighter. Sarah came out from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to me. You did it, David, she said softly, her eyes shining with pride. I nodded, taking a sip of the coffee, strong and hot, the familiar taste grounding me. I lost her, Sarah. I said, the realization hitting me like a wave of grief. I had won the house, but I had lost my daughter. You lost the idea of her, Sarah corrected gently. The real her, the one who betrayed you? She was gone long before today. We sat in the living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. The house felt too big again, just like it did after Lisa died. But this time, it wasn't filled with sorrow. It was filled with peace. I walked over to the dusty bookshelf in the hallway. I picked up the photo of Lisa and me, the one Jessica had discarded. I wiped the dust off the glass, tracing the outline of her smile. I carried it back to the living room, placed it in the center of the mantelpiece, where it belonged. I spent the next few weeks reclaiming my home. I moved the comfortable old sofa back to its rightful place. I opened the windows wide, letting the fresh air chase away the lingering scent of Mike's cologne and the ghosts of their betrayal. I went back to the shed. My tools were still there, waiting for me. Lisa's gardening gloves still hung on the hook. I picked up a hammer, the familiar weight comforting in my hand. I realized I wasn't done building. I started volunteering for a local charity that built homes for low-income families. I used my skills, my experience, my knowledge to help others. I taught young volunteers how to frame a wall, how to install a window, how to build something that lasts. I found purpose again. I found myself again. One evening, I sat on the porch swing, the familiar squeak, a comforting rhythm. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The gnat sibiled. I had lost my daughter, but I had found my dignity. I had been erased, but I had rewritten my place in the world. I pulled out a blueprint I had been working on, not for a house, but for my new life. A life built on a foundation of resilience, strength, and the quiet knowledge that I was enough. I was David, I was a builder, and I was finally home. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your time matters.